Welcome to the setup. Today I want to talk about Hoyt's new RX9 Ultra. Hoyt's Bow Hunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, Muddy Outdoors Tree Stands, Stealth Cam Trail Cameras, and Hoyt. I'm not a big car buff, but if I was, I wouldn't be so focused on the suspension and the chassis. I'd be looking at the engine. I would want the best engine possible in my car, and that's what Hoyt did with the RX9. The new cam, I think it's the fourth or fifth generation of the HBX. They say HBX Gen 4. So this is where a lot of the effort went in the design of this bow. I was shooting the RX8 and I killed some animals with it. And I just got this a few days ago, a couple weeks ago. So I haven't had a chance to hunt with it much. So I'm looking forward to putting a few animals in the freezer with this one too. But the biggest difference between the 8 and the 9 is definitely the cam system. They've put a lot of work into it, and really specifically, if you want to break it down into like the differences between the 8 and the 9, we can now adjust draw length by a quarter of an inch at a time, whereas before it was half-inch adjustment. Also, they've optimized the force versus draw of this bow. So when you pull it back, it comes up to poundage and holds that poundage for a longer time before dropping off into the let-off. It's more what you'd say a little bit more of a flat top on the force versus draw curve. That just allows you to store more energy when you draw the bow. And you can't do that with modules that have a really wide range of adjustment, because you're going to be really good for, say, the short draw end of the adjustment range, but maybe on the long draw end, you're going to be off. So they've optimized, like I said, this module system. It's a smaller amount of adjustment, but it has more energy storage built into it. So maybe you can't buy a bow that makes a 3-inch draw length adjustment range, but if you buy one with a 2-inch range, now you're going to have not only more adjustment, but better performance within that range. That was the big difference. They also changed the back wall. You can either have a hard back wall or an extra hard back wall, and I'm an extra hard back wall kind of a guy. I like to have something hard to pull against. I like at full draw aiming while I'm pulling into the back of the back wall of the draw force. And you don't want something soft there, because then you're going to have that spongy feel. You want that to be rock solid. So I like that. It's got let off, 75, 80, or 85%. And I've got mine set for 85% right now. The older I get, the more I can appreciate the higher let off. And I know that there are some trade-offs between let off and accuracy, because of the amount of manipulation that you can put onto the string at full draw with your release aid has more effect on your accuracy when the let off is higher. So there are people who are going to be able to shoot the lower let off and be more accurate with that. But again, like I said, the older I get, it just feels more comfortable at full draw, not having to hold as much weight. So that gives me that option. Talking about the riser itself, I noticed they took some of the hardware out of it, some of the metal hardware that was in the carbon riser. Not a big deal between the 8 and the 9. Probably made it a little bit lighter if I had to guess. I can't remember looking at the specs what this one weighs. I'm not even going to quote the specs. You can go on Hoyt's website and you can look that up. I know that didn't change the draw length a whole lot, or the brace height a whole lot. That's the difference between the grip and the string before you draw the bow. So that's about the same. They shortened it roughly an inch. This is the Ultra. So the Ultra on the RX8 was roughly an inch longer than this. And that's not a huge deal to me, because I've never worried about that small of an increment of axle to axle length, but I know that they got some feedback from people in the field wanting a shorter bow. So they were able to achieve that. The one thing I like about it, and I'm gonna shoot it again, you can listen to it, but I like the dead feel in the hand when I shoot this bow. I mean, the RX-8 was good for that too. The RX-8 and the 9 both have that same feel. Some of that's a product of the carbon riser. Some of it's a product of the cam. Some of it's also a product of the geometry, where the limbs are going straight up and straight down, rather than kicking forward. But let me take another shot for you. Okay, solid wall. Wow, that's like rock solid. So I like to pull against that while I'm squeezing the trigger. Okay, I'm sure you heard the shot. You don't have much to compare that to, obviously, but if I had the RX-8 out here, you could hear maybe a slight difference between the 8 and the 9. They're pretty similar from that standpoint. But overall, I mean, gosh, there's no recoil. You can shoot this, almost 100% open-handed and not have it try to jump out of your hand. It's got that little of amount of recoil. Those are the main features. This one's got the integrated rest. The, what does Hoyt call this? I have to get my reading glasses on to see that. Ultra rest, but it's their integrated rest that fits right into the riser. That's really handy. I definitely recommend that. I don't have a very elaborate stabilizer system on mine. Hoyt makes a better line of accessories to go along with this bow now, more complete. There's a lot of stabilizer options that are available that you can really trick this out and make it aim and hold and follow through perfectly the way that you want it. This one also has the pick rail system for attaching your sight to the riser, and that's not new for this bow. I think that started with the RX-7, if I'm not mistaken, but that's really handy. I found that really useful for me because I've got a low anchor point, so my sight has to be pretty high because my arrow tends to fly higher coming off that lower anchor than maybe a lot of people who anchor a little bit higher. So as a result of that, I need every bit of adjustability that I can get, and that pick rail definitely allows that. Whereas if you just go to the standard mounting system, you can even see the way I've got it set up. I mean, it's high up on the riser. So I do like the extra flexibility and adjustment that you get from that. Same, two limbs, whatever you call that, double limb, 2-limb system, split limb that they had with the RX-8. A little bit wider limbs, more stability. They don't need the rubber silencer that was between the limbs before that kind of held them together, so they work together a little bit more. It's again, I mean, the amount of innovation in this bow maybe not quite so obvious when you compare it to the RX-8, but when you start getting into the cam system, when you actually draw the bow and shoot it, you're going to feel the difference there. Another feature of the HBX cam system is the smoothness of the draw. For the amount of energy that the cam stores in the limbs of the bow, it draws pretty easy. I won't say easy, it draws smoothly. Yeah, it's just really smooth all the way through. There's not a real peak or harsh spot in the draw cycle. And again, I've talked about the back wall and how much I like that. Another thing on the bow too that's probably worth mentioning is the string and harness system that Hoyt uses. They got a name for it now. It's called Wireworks. They had another brand that they used for their string and harness system, but now they've really kind of put a lot of time and effort into making the perfect string system for these bows. So the string actually works with the bow. They've designed it so that this exact string weight with this distribution of weight makes the best performance. So, again, Hoyt's tried to do everything that they can to squeeze as much performance as they are able to out of this bow. And if you compare it to the RX-8, they've got a chart on their website you can look at that shows how much arrow speed the 9 picks up at each draw length compared to the 8. And it's pretty impressive. At some draw lengths, it's definitely noticeable amount. So, like I said, it's a race car, and they put their effort into the engine. So hopefully you get a chance to go to your Hoyt dealer and take a couple shots with the RX-9. Like I said, this is the Ultra. I like the longer bows. Obviously, got a longer draw, but stop by your Hoyt dealer, check them out, and I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you back here again soon for the next episode of The Setup. And remember to always dream big.